Good morning, children. Today we are here to discuss chapter 1, that is matter in our surrounding. Before I start the chapter, let us understand what all will be the learning objectives, what all we will be able to explain after studying this chapter. You will be able to define matter, and you will be able to explain the characteristics of the particles of matter. We will be able to differentiate between the three physical states of matter, that is solid, liquid and gases. You will explain diffusion, and you will be able to cite few examples from day-to-day life where diffusion takes place. Then you will be able to explain the change of state on increasing the temperature or decreasing the temperature, also when pressure is changed. Then you will also be able to explain evaporation and the factors which affect the rate of evaporation. So let us start with the chapter. So first of all, the question arises, what is matter? So matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. So anything in our surrounding which has mass, which occupies space, they all fall in the category of matter. All scientists and the philosophers, they wanted to understand the nature of matter. So Indian scientists, Indian philosophers, they just gave a suggestion that all types of matter are made up of 5 elements: air, water, fire, sky and air and water. And they were under this thought that all kinds of matter, they have different percentages of these 5 elements, which are called Panch Tattva in Hindi. That is why they show different types of properties. Then at the time, the matter scientists tried to classify matter. So there were 2 ways in which matter was classified. One was based on the physical state. The matter was classified into 3 states: solid, liquid and gases, on the basis of physical state. One was on the basis of chemical composition. Matter was divided into pure substances and mixtures on the basis of chemical composition. In this chapter, we will be studying about the first classification, that is based on the physical state of matter. Now, let us understand what is actually there were 2 thoughts about matter. Some scientists, they just considered matter as continuous, as a log of wood, and some were under the impression that matter is made up of particles. So there is an activity by which we can verify which thought is correct. So what is done? We just carry out an activity, and what do? We take water in a beaker, then we add little salt to it, and we will find that when we add salt to it, salt doesn't make a upper layer, rather it gets into the water and just disappears. So this clearly shows that water, a matter, is made up of particles, and the particles of salt, that is another matter, that gets into the spaces between the particles of water. So this establishes matter is particulate, it is made up of particles. Another is that let us find how small are the particles of matter which constitute it. So we can carry out an activity. It's a simple activity, which the things which are required are water and potassium permanganate crystals, which have dark purple color, which are soluble in water, and when they dissolve, they form pink color solution. So what is done? We take 2 to 3 crystals of potassium permanganate, and then we put it in beaker. Then we add 10 ml of water to it. It forms a dark pink color solution. Then we take only 1 ml of this solution into another beaker, and again we add 9 ml of water to make it 10 ml. Again we see the color remains pink, though the color becomes little lighter, and we go on doing this. Every time we take 1 ml of the previous solution, and then we dilute it to make 10 ml. Even after 9-10 dilutions, the solution which is obtained, we see that contains pink color, and we know pink color is because of the potassium permanganate particles, right? So this clearly shows that 1 or 2 crystals of potassium permanganate, they could impart colors to large quantity of water. It means that small crystal of potassium permanganate is made up of millions and trillions of particles, which imparts color to the large volume of water. So we can say that particles of matter are very, very small. They are small beyond our imagination. Another is, now let us study what all are characteristics of particles of matter. We'll carry out the activities, we'll discuss the activities, and then we'll find the conclusion. So first is that matter is made up of particles, that is established through the activity. Now the particles of matter are very, very small. Just I discussed the activity. Now particles of matter have spaces between them. This the activity which I have discussed, that clearly shows that there are the spaces between the water molecules. When we add potassium permanganate crystal to it, then the particles of potassium permanganate get into the spaces between the water molecules. So clearly shows that there are the spaces between the particles of matter. Now third is that particles of matter, they are continuously moving. For this we can again carry out an activity. We can take water in a beaker, then we can add few drops of ink to it. Right? We'll see that the ink particles, they start moving. You can see the ink color spreading throughout the water. So this can happen only the particles of matter are moving. So we can conclude that particles of matter are continuously moving. Then the another characteristic of particles of matter is that they attract each other. Right? They are the forces of attraction between the particles of matter which holds all the particles together. We can carry out the activity again. To understand it, we can take iron nail, we can take piece of chalk, we can take a rubber band, and we try to break all the three solids. We have taken only the solids and we try to break them by stretching or by hammering. We see that it's easy to break chalk, whereas it's very difficult to break nail. Even we will not be able to break nail. So that clearly shows that the forces of attraction between the three solids, they're different. Though they all are solids, but the magnitude of force of attraction is different in the three solids. The forces of attraction are maximum, the strongest in case of RNA. So this activity again shows, again we can compare the three states of matter, liquid, solids and gases. So we'll find that the forces of attraction are strongest in case of solids. Now let us study about the three states of matter. First, if we take a solid, suppose I take a duster. Either I hold it in my hand or I just keep it on the table. You will see its volume as well as shape remains constant. If I try to press it, I am not able to compress it. If I try to break it by applying force, I have to apply large magnitude of force. Even if I apply a small magnitude of force, nothing happens. Or I can say solids are rigid. They have definite shape, definite volume, they are rigid, they cannot be compressed, they are incompressible, and they have a definite boundaries. If we come to liquid state, again I take another example of liquid, let it be water, the commonly available liquid. I take it in a beaker. Let us take 10 ml of water. So volume of water is 10 ml and I just keep it in a beaker. So its shape is of the shape of a beaker. Its volume is 10 ml. Now I pour this water into a conical flask. Now I see that its volume remains 10 ml but its shape changes. It takes the shape of conical flask. So I can see liquid is a state of matter which has a definite volume but it doesn't have a definite shape. It acquires the shape of the container in which it is poured. Then if I talk about the compressibility, liquids are also practically incompressible, slightly compressible, we can consider that. Then if I talk about rigidity, means if I apply force, so their shape changes. They are not rigid, right? And if I just simply pour little liquid somewhere, you will find it starts flowing. It always liquid flows from a high level to lower level. So they are actually, they are not rigid, they are fluids. And then they don't have the distinct boundaries. Then if I talk about the gases you'll find gases again, if I open a cylinder anywhere in a room, a small cylinder, then it will occupy all the space available. So gases neither have a definite shape nor a definite volume. And if I compress, just taking it in a syringe and then I apply pressure, so their volume can be reduced to greater extents means they are highly compressible, and again, they are not rigid, they flow in all the directions. So these are the properties, visible properties, on the basis of which I can say yes, this particular matter is solid if it has a definite shape and a volume. If it does not have a definite shape but has a definite volume, it means it's a liquid, and neither it's a shape definite nor its volume definite, so it's a gas. Let us see why do solid, liquids and gases, they have these different properties. So this we can actually, a matter is solid, liquid or gas. That depends on the arrangement of the particles. As I said earlier, all kinds of matter, whether it is solid, liquid or gas, they all are made up of particles. In solid state, you can see that particles are compactly packed, right? So the spaces between the particles is very, very small, and depending, force of attraction depends on the spaces between the particles. So they are actually, these particles are bound by very strong forces of attraction. And if we talk about the movement of the particles, as they are compactly packed, the particles are not able to move freely, rather they vibrate at their position. So that is why solids have a definite shape and definite volume. They are incompressible, they are rigid. If we come to liquid state, then you will see in liquid state, particles are far apart, they are loosely packed as compared to the solids. So the forces of attraction are weaker than the solids. They can move about, but the forces of attraction are not that weak which cannot hold the particles together. So these forces of attraction are strong enough to keep all the particles together. That is why liquids have a definite volume, but as they can move about, their shape is not definite. And as they can move around, they are fluids, they can flow, and they are slightly compressible. Now we come to gases. If you see gases, the particles, they are far apart, right? So as I said, the forces of attraction depend on the spaces between the particles. So they are the last interparticular spaces. So particles are bound together by very, very weak forces. Or we can say the forces which bound the particles together are negligible. That is why they can move in all possible directions, and that is why they acquire the shape as well as the volume of the container in which they are poured, and by applying pressure, the volume can be reduced to a greater extent. That's why they are highly compressible, and they also flow, they are fluids. So this way we can compare the properties of all the three states of matter. You can see that this is the tabular form where we can compare the three states of matter: solids, liquids. As I said, volume, in case of solid it is definite volume and a definite shape. In case of liquid, it's definite volume but no definite shape. In case of gas, it's a neither definite shape nor definite volume. If I talk about now the another compressibility, solids have negligible compressibility, liquids also have very little compressibility or no compressibility practically, and whereas gases have high compressibility. Then we can talk about rigidity and fluidity. So solids are rigid, liquids and gases are fluids. Then we can talk about the density, as the particles are compactly packed in solids, so their densities are very high. In case of liquid, it's moderate, and in case of gases, densities is very, very low. Then, as I have already discussed about the spaces between the particles, movement of the particles, and that is why the forces of attraction between the particles. Now, based on the property that liquids are moving, all the particles of matter are moving all the time. So one type of matter mixes with the other type of matter if they are kept in contact. This process of intermixing of matter of two or more different types we call diffusion. So here, if we discuss the rate of diffusion in solid, liquid and gases, so you can see that if we keep solids together, there are very few examples where diffusion takes place in solids. So it's we can say mostly they do not diffuse. Whereas liquid, if you mix together, so they diffuse. Whereas gases, they diffuse very easily, as the forces of attraction between the particles are very, very weak. Now, this all you can see, this is again the comparative study of arrangement of particles in solid, liquid and gaseous state. Now we know water can exist in all the three states. Yes, we find it in solid state, in mountains as snow. Water as a liquid we use for drinking, it's in all water bodies, and it is present in the gaseous state as water vapor in air. But if we talk about any other matter, that the state can be changed by changing the temperature. If we heat solid, it changes to liquid. The process is called melting, and if liquid is heated further, then it changes to gaseous state, and the process is called vaporization. The reversal of this process takes place when we reduce the temperature. If gaseous state is heated, it condenses to form liquid. Process, as I said, is condensation. And same way, if liquid is cool, it solidifies to give solid. That is, process is called freezing, or it is called solidification. Let us study these processes in detail. First is fusion or melting. If we can carry out an experiment to determine the melting point of ice. So for this we take ice cubes in a beaker and then we place a thermometer, right? So we'll see the initially temperature may be even below 0 degrees centigrade, and as we keep it for some time, then the temperature rises, and very soon you'll see that ice starts melting. And if you look at the temperature at the thermometer, then we'll see the temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, and then even the ice keeps on melting, the temperature does not increase. Once the whole of the ice melts, then the temperature starts increasing, right? So this process, when solid changes to liquid on absorbing heat, we call melting or fusion, and the particular temperature, the fixed temperature at which a solid changes to liquid is called the melting point of that solid, right? And here we can easily explain why does this melting take place. Actually, what happens when we supply heat, in solids the particles, they were simply vibrating, they were not able to move about. But when we supply heat, the heat supplied increases their kinetic energy, the particles start vibrating vigorously. More and more heat is supplied, then their vibration becomes so vigorous, one stage comes when their kinetic energy becomes that high that they overcome the forces of attraction and the particles start moving within the bulb. This stage we call melting. Now, at the time when, as I said, that ice starts melting at 0 degrees centigrade, and still it keeps on absorbing heat from the surrounding, but the temperature does not rise until and unless the whole of the ice melts. Actually, this heat which is supplied at the melting point, that does not increase the kinetic energy of the particles. Where is it used up? Actually, it is used up in overcoming the forces of attraction and bring about the change of state. So this heat gets hidden within the matter, and during fusion this happens. So that is why we call this heat the latent heat of fusion. Latent means hidden, the heat which gets hidden during the fusion, and we can define latent heat of fusion as it is the amount of heat required to convert 1 kilogram of solid into liquid at its melting point at atmospheric pressure. So this heat does not increase the temperature, rather it is used up in overcoming the forces of attraction. That is why we don't see the change in temperature. Now let us see what happens when liquid is heated. Okay, this is, now we can set up an apparatus to determine the boiling point of water. Here this is the apparatus. Here we take water in a beaker, and then again we want to determine its boiling point. So we need a thermometer, the laboratory thermometer, and then we just place the thermometer and we start heating water. You'll see water starts, the temperature starts increasing. You'll see that level of mercury in thermometer keeps on rising. Then you see that when water starts boiling, when I say boiling means the change of state from liquid to gaseous state that takes place throughout the liquid. You will see that the bubbles are forming throughout the liquid. Again, in case of water, it happens at 100 degrees centigrade. You'll see the water starts boiling and the temperature which is shown by the thermometer is 100 degrees centigrade. Again, this process, as I said, this is called boiling. Once the boiling point is attained, you'll see even you are supplying heat, but temperature does not rise. Right? The temperature does not rise because again the heat gets used up in overcoming the forces of attraction and bring about the change of state. This heat which is supplied at boiling point to boil the liquid we call latent heat of vaporization. Again, we can define it as its amount of energy which is required to convert 1 kilogram of liquid into its vapor at its boiling point at atmospheric pressure. Again, this heat does not change the temperature. Temperature of water remains 100 degree constant for some time until and unless the whole of the liquid changes into vapor. Now we can see the effect of temperature on the molecular motion. In solid, as during melting, solids particles were vibrating only, and when heat is supplied, the particles start vibrating vigorously, and finally they just simply leave the leave their fixed position and they start moving. So that converts solid into liquid. Now there is one more process. It's all solids do not change into liquid on heating. There are few solids like camphor, naphthalene, iodine. When they're heated, they directly convert into gaseous form. And when their vapor is cooled, then that directly converts into solid. This process we call sublimation. Here this is the diagram which is showing the process of sublimation. The solid which sublimes, here we have taken ammonium chloride, which also converts into gaseous state on heating directly in a china dish. And when we heat ammonium chloride, it directly changes into vapor, but we have to collect vapor. So funnel is inverted over it and its opening is closed with the cotton, and very soon we see white solid depositing on the inner part of the funnel. That is actually the solid ammonium chloride, which we call sublimate of ammonium chloride, which is obtained by cooling the vapor of ammonium chloride. So this process is called sublimation. Here this is showing the interconversion of state. That solid, if it is heated, it changes to liquid. That the process is called fusion or melting. And when liquid is cooled, then the process is called solidification, or it is also called freezing. Same way, when liquid is heated, it changes into vapor. The process is called vaporization. And when gas is cooled, then it changes again back to liquid. The process is known as condensation. But as I said, there are few solids which directly convert into gaseous state on heating. This process is called sublimation, or the vapor changes to gaseous to solid state on cooling. That process is also known as sublimation. Now, vaporization, the term I use for the change of state from liquid to gaseous state on heating. Now, every time this is not termed as boiling. Sometimes you must have seen, you keep some liquid, you keep some water in a saucer, and even its boiling point is not attained. Temperature does not reach 100 degrees centigrade. Still, water disappears. Actually, this phenomenon is called evaporation, which does not take place at boiling point. It takes place at a temperature which is below the boiling point. So we can define evaporation as the process in which a liquid changes into vapor at a temperature below the boiling point, and it's a surface phenomenon. Only water or the liquid from the surface changes into the gaseous state. Now, as I said, we can again find why does evaporation take place. So what happens that liquid is having particles which have kinetic energy, but the kinetic energy of all the particles is not same. Here you can see in the diagram. So some particles, they are having more kinetic energy than the other particles, right? When these particles with higher kinetic energy, they come to the surface. Now because of the higher kinetic energy, they are able to overcome the forces of attraction. So they overcome the forces of attraction and they move as vapor into the air. So this happens below the boiling point. So we call this vaporization as evaporation. So So we can compare the two phenomena which take place when a liquid is heated as boiling and evaporation. Evaporation, if it's taking place only on the surface and it is happening at a temperature below the boiling point of the liquid. And we call it boiling if it takes place at a fixed temperature, which we call the boiling point of liquid, and it is taking place throughout the liquid. You will see the bubbles are formed throughout the liquid, then only it is called the boiling. Right? Now, there are few factors which affect the rate of evaporation. There are four factors. One is temperature, surface area, humidity, and the wind speed. Right? Let us see how these factors affect the rate of evaporation. Increase in temperature increases the rate of evaporation. You must have seen that on a hot day, wet clothes they dry up faster. Temperature is high, so the water from the wet cloth evaporates faster. Then second is surface area. Surface area, if you just wet clothes, if you fold them and keep them in sun, and on the other hand you just spread the same type of wet cloth in sun, you'll find the wet cloth which has been spread that dries up faster. So this is because the rate of evaporation increases with the increase in surface area, and this is because evaporation is a surface phenomenon, more particles which have higher kinetic energy will reach the surface and will be leaving liquid as vapor. So rate of evaporation increases. Third is humidity. Humidity is the amount of water vapor present in air, right? So air at any place can hold a fixed amount of water in it, a particular amount of water in it. If amount of water or the humidity is already high, then it cannot hold more water vapor in it. So as a result, if humidity is high, rate of evaporation decreases because water now cannot change into water vapor. So rate of evaporation decreases with the increase in humidity. The fourth one is wind speed. As wind speed increases, the rate of evaporation increases. This is because when wind moves and just when it touches the surface of the liquid, then it will be taking some more particles along with it. So some more particles will be going as vapor into air. So rate of evaporation increases. These are few examples which I have given from the day-to-day life. Here, evaporation causes cooling. This is again can be explained because during evaporation, the particles which had higher kinetic energy, they leave the liquid, right? So the average kinetic energy of the remaining particles that becomes less, that becomes low. So to restore that kinetic energy, now the liquid which evaporates, it absorbs energy from the surrounding, and as it absorbs energy from the surrounding, the temperature of surrounding goes down. So we can say evaporation causes cooling. Now there are a number of examples which we can take from day-to-day life where evaporation causes cooling. You must have seen the water cooler, desert coolers which are being used. So water is sprinkled on the pads and the air enters through the opening. It just simply enters when we just start it. So there is an exhaust fan which pulls the air in. So when hot air moves in through the wet pads, then the water absorbs energy from the incoming hot air and evaporates. The incoming air becomes cool. So this is a simple principle on which the desert cooler works. So this is now what all we have already studied. So this is the particle nature of matter we studied. Then we studied the characteristics of matter, the three states of matter. We compared the three states of matter on the basis of volume, shape, compressibility, rigidity, density, the arrangement of the particles, then movement of the particles, forces of attraction, rate of diffusion. Then we studied about the change of states also from solid to liquid, liquid to gaseous, and vice versa. And then we studied about the characteristics of the particles of matter. Thank you, children. That's all for today.